Good morning, everyone. We're going to get ready to get started. We're right at 9, so we definitely want to make sure that we honor your time. You see here on the screen, we have our Zoom meeting preparation slide, and I'm sure you're familiar with it if you've attended any of our sessions, but just be sure that your phones or computers are muted, and make sure that you turn off your camera. Both of those things minimize background noise and they save bandwidth. And if you have any questions during the presentation, you can drop your question into the chat and we'll have someone to answer that question for you. And even if they have to answer it later. And if you or anyone that you know requires an interpreter or any other accessibility needs for future presentations, you can contact LDOE Communications at la.gov. So we're going to get started with today's session, and it's session 8. It's hard to believe we're at session 8 in our Leader Professional Development series. This series was entitled Leading the Charge for Evidence-Based Literacy Practices. And this session is Increasing Equity Through Culturally Responsive Literacy Classrooms. If you are new to our series, I see a lot of return persons, but if you're new, I am Katasha Edwards. I am a literacy PD specialist here at the department and an educator for this is my 22nd year that we're going into. So just excited that you've taken time out to be with us today as we delve into today's content. This is really exciting, and I see a couple people here that attended our Science of Reading Implementation office hours. We did launch these 2 weeks ago, and we have been hosting them on Fridays at 10:30, from 10:30 to 11. And it's just an opportunity for you to jump on, to hear. We do answer some of our FAQs, some of our frequently asked questions during our office hours, but we also open up the platform for you to drop questions in the chat so that we can answer your questions that you may have around implementation with the science of reading. During the office hours, we have myself, Sarah Stolman, who does the K2 Literacy PD, and also Dr. Lisa Holliday. So we invite you to join us if you have time. And someone's going to drop the link to the office hours along with the password, which is literacy, into the chat. So all of our sessions, I always began with the Literacy Division mission, which I think is really, really important and tied to today's presentation. So our mission is that all Louisiana students will have improved literacy outcomes through high quality instruction and interactions by an effective teacher supported by leaders and families. The department priority is to provide the highest quality teaching and learning environment from birth through graduation, and our focus area, or our priority focus area, is literacy. And I think the key word for today's session is the word all, especially when we're thinking about culturally responsive classrooms and instruction. The key word is all Louisiana students. So today's session introduces the core components of culturally responsive instruction and why it's directly tied to increasing student equity. Participants will explore the components. So here, we're going to begin by defining a culturally responsive approach. So in 1994, I can think back to 1994, that's over 20 years ago, Gloria Lanson Billings released the book Dream Keepers, and it's really where she defined the term culturally responsive or culturally relevant pedagogy. This describes a form of teaching that calls for engaging learners whose experiences and cultures are traditionally excluded from mainstream settings. And then some subsequent research around culturally responsive pedagogy, and the person who really coined the term culturally responsive teaching was Geneva Gay. And here in her work, she really outlined what the teacher's strategies and practices aligned to culturally responsive teaching are and what they look like. And she really emphasized that cultural knowledge, prior experiences, frame of reference, and performance styles of ethnically diverse students make learning encounters more relevant to and effective for them. So when you are able to access this presentation in our literacy library, you'll see that I've linked both Dreamkeepers and Culturally Responsive Teaching, the Theory, Research, and Practice. Both of those books are linked here in case you want to do some further research, knowing that Gloria Lance and Billings' work was from 1994, and the work of Geneva Gay her book has been updated as most recently as 2018. So here are some principles for culturally responsive teaching. And this is from the Brown University Teaching Diverse Learners. They have a blog and a website, but these are just a couple of principles that I thought were good to bring in. Culture is essential to learning. It plays a role not only in communicating and receiving information, but also in shaping groups of and individuals. And this is the quote from the Dreamkeepers, that culturally responsive teaching is a pedagogy that recognizes the importance of including students' cultural references in all aspects of learning. So here are some characteristics of culturally responsive classrooms. Culturally responsive classrooms have positive perspectives of parents and families. There's a communication of high expectations. There's learning within the context of culture. There's student-centered instruction, culturally mediated instruction. There's some reshaping of the curriculum where necessary. The teacher serves as a facilitator when possible. There's a demonstration of cultural sensitivity. Those classrooms promote student-controlled classroom discourse, and it should include small group instruction and cooperative learning. So we're going to dig a little deeper into some of those characteristics and what they look like. So when thinking in terms of positive perspectives of parents and families, there should be ongoing participation in dialogue with students, parents, and community issues and community members on issues important to them, along with including these individuals in issues in the classroom, curriculum, and activities. So when I think of this, I think of like my experiences as a school leader. And whenever I would speak with my staff about including families and parents, and I always use the term that the students and their parents, their families, they are our customers. So in terms of customer service, the perspective of your customer should always be included when making decisions about curriculum, about activities that you're hosting. There should be just a culturally inclusive culture where parents' perspectives and families' perspectives are positively included. There should be a communication of high expectations. And when thinking of the lens of equity, there should be consistent messages from both the teacher and the whole school that the students will succeed. And this should be based on, a genuine respect for students and the belief in the student capability. And when I was doing my research, preparing for this session, I really had an aha moment, and I put it here, that the science of reading really supports the ability to communicate high expectations. And it really extends our ability to increase that equity lens, because we're going to use these research-based practices to support our literacy instruction and really be able to communicate high expectations. And here, I was apprehensive about putting this, but this is one of those characteristics that is included in the work behind culturally responsive classrooms. And I know you're going to say, how are we going to reshape the curriculum? Because, our curriculum is set. So here it just states that a reshaped curriculum is culturally responsive to the background of students. So not telling you to tell your teachers to change the curriculum, but how can they make their curriculum reshaped and be responsive to the background of the students that they service? There should be culturally mediated instruction. This is instruction that's characterized by the use of culturally mediated cognition or awareness. There should be culturally appropriate social situations for learning, and everyone should be culturally valued. Inside of our culturally responsive classrooms, the teacher should be a facilitator when possible, and active teaching methods should be included. So within an active teaching environment, the teacher's role is to guide, mediate, be a knowledgeable consultant, and an instructor. So teachers know that their roles within a culturally responsive classroom, and really in any classroom, you should see a teacher performing these various roles. And the instruction should be designed to promote student engagement by requiring that students play an active role in crafting the curriculum and developing learning activities when possible. There should definitely be cultural sensitivity. In order to maximize learning opportunities, teachers gain the knowledge of cultures represented in their classrooms, and they translate this knowledge into instructional practices. And this is just, one of those quotes that people don't care that you know until they know that you care. So as a teacher, and as a characteristic of a culturally responsive classrooms, teachers really have to gain an understanding of the various cultures, and whether these are linguistic cultural diversity or just cultural diversity in general. We should be very knowledgeable of who's represented in our classrooms and how take many opportunities of how to translate that into our instructional practice. When possible, there should be student-controlled classroom discourse. Students should be given the opportunity to control some portion of the lesson. And this will give teachers, an insight into the ways that speech and negotiation are used in students' homes and in their communities. And we know that we model for students what classroom discourse should look like, but allowing students to do this really gives the teachers a lens and an insight of what students bring to the classroom with them. There should be small group instruction and cooperative learning. And we know that we're going to do our small group explicit direct instruction, but there should also be opportunities for low pressure student controlled learning groups that really can assist students with the development of academic language and vocabulary by being able to interact with their peers. So when preparing for the school year with the lens of having a culturally responsive classroom or a culturally responsive school setting, I went back to our family literacy engagement plan. So the family literacy engagement plan is in our literacy library. So if you visit the literacy library, there's a link to the family literacy engagement strategic plan. And within the family literacy engagement strategic plan, they have some priority categories. And you see the categories are literacy across the content, school environment, cultural responsiveness, community connections, and at-home learning activities. So for today, we're gonna dig a little bit deeper into those cultural responsiveness supports that are embedded in our family literacy engagement strategic plan, and how you can utilize those supports as you begin to prepare for the school year. Within the family literacy engagement plan, it really outlines that cultural responsiveness should include different cultures and the awareness that different cultures have different norms, different beliefs, and languages, and all of which are worthy of respect and accommodation. And when thinking of Louisiana classrooms, we know that the diversity of Louisiana's classrooms may require different types of access when it comes to literacy and learning. And when students perform best when they feel cared for, supported, and their basic physical, mental, and emotional needs are met. So as you prepare to engage your school communities around cultural responsiveness, you should be sure that you, your teachers, and their families have open lines of discussion regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. These should be among staff, faculty, and families. And then as the leaders, whether you're school or district leaders, you should provide and model safe, supported dialogue practices and encourage productive conversations around sensitive subjects. You should also conduct frequent stakeholder surveys using a variety of written methods, including written forms, phone calls, or digital formats to accommodate the diverse responses that may be needed. Here are some structures that should be in place as we think of the opening of school around cultural responsiveness. There should be opportunities to participate in community outreach programs that engage community organizations, such as social service agencies and nonprofit groups to promote diverse literacy through read alouds, book donations, and presentations from community members. We definitely want to, in the opportunity to provide a culturally responsive setting, as many opportunities as we can, allow your community to come into the school to provide presentations, like I said, read alouds, book donations. Children should benefit from the opportunity to see people that look like them. So when thinking in preparation your school structures for the beginning year, that should be a priority. This one was a big one to me. You should promote exposure to multiple cultures through diverse supplemental texts. So I know that you're thinking your curriculum is already set and you've purchased that, but you have the opportunity through classroom libraries and through school libraries. The school librarian is a very valuable resource who can support really highlighting multiple cultures through diverse supplemental texts and directing students through texts that support culture and diversity. We know that many of our school systems host cultural fairs throughout the school year to celebrate customs, foods, languages, and traditions, especially those represented in the student population. That's a strategy that you can think of. And really just think of in terms of being able to facilitate this happening more than just certain weeks and certain times, but it should be embedded into the fabric of the school community and the school culture. And you should ensure that your supporting documents and resources are available in spoken languages that are represented by your student families and their student populations. So as we have gone through, the series, the leader series, I've always just taken an opportunity to really spotlight, do a science of reading spotlight as we walk through. And, as we've said before, all of the sessions, both the teacher sessions and the leader sessions, are available in the literacy library. So if you really want to do, an extensive deep dive into Scarborough's reading rope and those different strands, Sarah did an amazing job really walking you through each of those, and those are available in the literacy library. But for today, we're gonna focus on the lens of culturally responsive teaching and the science of reading connections and some brain research around that. Prior to this session, I did share that the Amplify podcast, they're doing science of reading, deconstructing the reading rope spotlight with their podcast. And I think I have that in the links that someone could drop into the chat, but you can easily find it through Google by looking at Amplified Podcasts. And this one that I have linked today is a conversation with Dr. Carolyn Storm, where she really walked through her experiences as a teacher, a non-traditional teacher, and her experiences with research and research in neuroscience and how it's related to the science of reading. So let's think about culture's connection to literacy instruction within the lens of the science of reading and brain research. We know that culture is the way that every brain makes sense of the world because, it's what we know. Everyone, regardless of their race or their ethnicity, they have a culture. So you can think of culture as software for the brain's hardware. The brain uses cultural information to turn everyday happenings into meaningful events. So if we want to help dependent learners do more higher order thinking and problem solving, then we have to access their brain's cognitive structures to deliver culturally responsive instruction. So this really made me think of the session that Sarah shared on background knowledge and what students bring and how to develop background knowledge. So we know that students are going to bring their lens and their culture because that is their background knowledge, and they're going to make connections based on that. So here are a couple more connections that are based on brain research. And just like we said a couple seconds ago, that previous studies show that drawing from students' cultural knowledge and their norms contributes favorably to reading comprehension and mathematical thinking. So we want to be able to draw from our students' cultural experiences because research and studies show that this enhances their ability to comprehend, which is what we want, which is what we know that reading rope shows that skilled readers are able to do. And the research on neuroscience shows that this is partially because everyone learns new information best when it's linked to what they already know. So as you prepare the teachers within your schools, remind them that using text, materials, and examples that draw from students' cultural schemas and their background knowledge makes it easier because they're able to leverage the students' existing neural pathways. So we know that, neuroscience is fairly new research, but this research shows that being able to make links to your background knowledge and your schema really makes it easier for students to learn and understand. So we really want to make sure that we're leveraging our students' abilities to do this. So we're going to pause here and do a little bit of reflecting and think about how will your staff utilize culturally responsive practices to support diverse learners as you go into this school year? How will you, as a leader, model culturally responsive practices as a school or district leader? How will you model the expectations for the staff? And what resources will you make available to support teachers with culturally responsive classroom instruction? So I know that I have given you just a laundry list of things to include in your back to school PD, but we know that the right to learn to read and equity is a high priority. And we know that the lens of culturally responsive practices are a vehicle in which we can support students with being able to do that. So when we're thinking in terms of our dual language learners and our students that are oftentimes learning and processing multiple languages at the same time, what resources do we have in place to be able to support teachers with the ability to effectively provide instruction for our students? So here is the session feedback. And I have appreciated everyone who's been able to do these forms throughout the series. And we are using this feedback as we craft subsequent professional development around literacy. We shared in our Science of Reading office hours on last week that we are in the process of developing some Science of Reading aligned to writing practices. And we're in the process of working together, myself, Sarah, and I, to really roll that out. And prior to this session, I know that there is definitely a need for some resources and strategies to support our middle school and upper elementary students who may be struggling with reading. So we want to make sure that we have some sessions. So just anything that you can think of beyond this series that can really support you in your role as a literacy leader in your district or on your campus, just you can drop that into the session feedback. And also, if your school system requires CLUs, if your email is included, today I'll be in the process of sending feedback CLU forms to persons that have attended the sessions throughout the series, and they need that for CLU. So be sure to include that if you need that. So as usual, any questions or suggestions, you can email me directly at katasha.edwards@la.gov, or you can email louisianaliteracy@la.gov with any questions or suggestions. Also, if you tweet or use Twitter or social media, we're really trying to keep this Science of Reading, effective literacy practice conversation going through social media. So if you tweet, be sure to tweet with the hashtag Louisiana Literacy or hashtag Reading Revival, and someone will drop that into the chat for you as well, to be sure to include that, because we definitely want to keep this conversation going. If you need additional support or you would just like to engage as a thought partner, we welcome you emailing myself or Sarah. We're looking forward to the opportunity to support beyond these initial series of PDs. So if you would like for us to, we're not sure with the reopening of school if we'll be able to be in many schools, but if you would like to attend possibly a PLC or maybe attend virtually, just to engage with as a thought partner with you around the implementation of effective literacy practices, we welcome that as well. We appreciate your leadership and we are grateful for your attendance today.